This is David with High Performance Stoicism. I want to talk to you about this question. Can Stoics just do it? What do I mean by just do it? Can Stoics just control their emotions? Can Stoics just repress their emotions? Can Stoics just will it that an emotion that is rising at a given point, they push it down? The reason I'm asking this question is because I see a lot of people saying Stoicism is against repressing our emotions. And I think that's a interesting idea to consider. But my answer is yes, of course Stoics can do these things because all people can do these things. So what is the problem that the person who says it's not about repressing emotions, it's not about controlling emotions, what are they getting at? I would agree 100% that Stoicism is not exclusively about repressing emotions or willing your emotions to be one way or another or controlling them, but there's no reason you shouldn't do this. In fact, it would be a good thing to try to see if you can deal with a fear that's coming. Just tell yourself, I'm not going to be fearful, or just say no. And I think that could be a perfectly fine part of Stoic practices, but you don't want to rely on it for a very simple reason. You don't have the skill in order to just do it to make that emotion go away. So if that's all you do, then you're often going to be disappointed and you're going to say, well, Stoicism doesn't really work. Part of Stoic practices is a kind of training, and one of the trainings is in situational techniques. One such technique is reframing. So if somebody does something that's offensive, that is likely to make you angry, reframing can prevent you being angry and offended. So you could say, this person's just being foolish. They don't understand what they're doing. And then you'll see, okay, the grounds of anger are taken away because you're thinking about it in a different way than you normally would. So normally you'd get angry, but this time you won't. And this goes for a number of other situational techniques, such as one of my favorites, pausing before you agree to a judgment, such as that person said something really offensive, or this person's a jerk or evil. Just pausing before you make that judgment can stop you from being angry. So this other reason I'm giving for not just doing it, not just controlling your emotions, is you want to work on your skill set, including the situational techniques I just mentioned, and you can't do that if you're just saying, I'm just going to do this on my own. In addition to that, just doing it, just controlling your emotions, you don't have the skill means sometimes it'll work and sometimes it will not work. Something like reframing is going to give you a much better shot at not being afraid. Reframing or pausing will give you a much better chance of not being tempted by something. So these techniques are very powerful. And once you learn them and start to deploy them on everyday situations, you'll see you can deal with a number of different emotions and even more powerful emotions with the situational techniques I mentioned than just by resisting or just by repressing the emotion. Now, some people might think at this point, well, you are trying to get to a point of the sage, and the sage is this wise man who doesn't have any mental disturbances, doesn't have any pathe, or it's often translated as passions. Won't they be able to control their anger just on the spot? Won't they be able to control their fear right on the spot when it arises? Well, that view of the sage is a misunderstanding. And actually, you're underestimating what the Stoics say this sage is capable of. The sage is one who has their mind in such a way that they don't experience any fear at all. Anger never arises for them. They never move toward grief and then stop it because they've gotten rid of the whole range of things that the Stoics call pathe or mental disturbances. So, what you're going for is you're going for developing your mind over time so that more and more of these mental disturbances have less an effect on you. And that's why you want to work on these situational techniques. And then, yes, it's perfectly good at certain sometimes to try it and just see, can I just stop the emotion that I don't want to have? Can I stop that thing from arising? And sometimes you'll be successful, and over time, you'll be more successful at that than earlier. Now, the main person we're talking about in this video, the person who is practicing Stoicism, that person is called by the Stoics a progressor. They're just not an ordinary person who's saying, well, I don't really want to work on my mind. I don't want to really train myself to be free of mental disturbances. I'm okay living in fear, being a slave of fear, being a slave of lust. I'm okay with getting angry and being outraged. I'm okay with those things. So those are ordinary people that are not practicing stoicism. But and we just talked about the sage, but here's the thing with a advanced progressor. And someone who is an advanced progressor, they're not only learning the situational techniques that I described, they're also learning what I call conditioning techniques. And these are techniques where you change your perspective over time. And then the result of doing this over time, when you have no idea it will happen, at some point, you will just not be angry and you can't explain why that is. You will not have fear and you can't explain why it is. Well, there's a simple explanation for why you are totally without anger, totally without fear in a given situation. It's because you've been practicing stoicism and you've been doing conditioning techniques such as writing stoic principles out in the morning, checking your behavior all day by how well you've adhered to them. And then over time, the things that people get excited about when they start Stoicism, which is learning these doctrines. Some things are up to us and some things are not up to us. I shall die one day and I'm a part of the divine whole. Once you start using those on a regular basis, you are going to be surprised and you'll just see, I am not tempted at all. I usually on a Friday night, I can't resist a second beer, but just this time you're just saying, no thanks, and without any inner resistance. And then, in a sense, you are just doing it, but it's on a foundation of Stoic conditioning. Now, I call these glimpses of perfection because people who have them, they can look at the sage, and that is a kind of unusual human being. Some people say that such a person can exist, but the reason when you're an advanced progressor that you get so excited about the sage is because you have these glimpses of perfection. And I'm just going to tell you one story that involved me where I just saw I had a response that was just a glimpse of perfection because I didn't anticipate it. I know in the past I would have acted differently. And so here's the story. One time I was picking up a friend in New York City at a philosophy conference, and I wasn't one of the people involved in the conference. And so I come in the middle of the conference near the end of the last day, and I walk in during a talk, and someone gave me a really nasty look, and it was pretty harsh. But I was just so happy to be there. I was happy to see my friend. I was interested. Oh, what are they talking about? And I understood this person's point of view because I usually am very conscious of etiquette at a conference, but I was just so happy about things. And so when this person gave me this really nasty scowl, I just kept smiling. I was really happy to be there. And believe it or not, this person's scowl totally melted and they started to smile a little too. They realized they were overreacting because I wasn't being disruptive, I wasn't being noisy, and in that respect I was being perfectly in accord with conference etiquette. But that just showed me when I acted that way, if that had happened a couple years before that, I would have been upset. I would have been offended. My smile would have, broken apart, and then I would have been annoyed with this person. They would have been on my mind as what a total jerk. The nerve of that person. But none of that happened. And so those glimpses of excellence are that will happen to you if you take the situational techniques and conditioning techniques seriously. But here's the thing you have to know overall as you are a progressor before you become a sage. And that is just doing it, just controlling the emotion, that will work in some cases, but not in others. In other words, you can use it for anger today, but on Thursday it might not work. The same is going to go for situational techniques, but these are a little more reliable. But even if you've dealt with a temptation well using these techniques, there could be times after that where the old temptation sneaks back. So that's why consistency is key, but it's good for you to know, don't worry that you're not having 100% success with any technique. And when you have these glimpses of perfection, when the emotion you usually had, you usually get impatient, and then one day you're just, I'm not impatient at all. Then you see you're definitely on the right track. But guess what? Next week, you could be a little impatient again. That's why it's important to just stick with it, stick with your Stoic practices, and leave a comment on this one because I think this is an important topic. Like and subscribe. We'll see you in the next video.